Hi everyone! In this video, I am going to share my Zinnia growing mistake with you. Actually, we are going to share our Zinnia growing mistake with you because we want to share with beginners to avoid this mistake that we have made in the past. Also, we want to share our painful experience with seasoned gardeners because I think it's important that we understand the cause of the issues. Last year, I killed half of my senior seedlings, and I even like cry on my camera. It's so embarrassing. And when I look back, I think the reason that I cry is not because my senior died, but because I didn't know what was going on. I imagine I have so many negative thoughts, thinking that it could be soil contamination, it could be disease going on in my garden, what would happen with my senior this year. I want to share our experience with you and also the answer that we have found out from this mistake. And I am not going to go through that in this video alone because I have my flower friend with me. Actually, she's my flower icon. I have been learning from her. So since I start going deep into cut flowers, and here she is, Amanda.
Hello. My name is Amanda, and I'm with She's a Mad Gardener. And I have been, my YouTube channel, I think, has been in the works about 4 years. And I have been gardening for, gosh, over 12 years now. And I know it's a long time. I'm younger than I look. And my background is I actually used to be a florist. I used to create massive high-end installations of floral in the Dallas, Texas area, and I'm in the Texas Zone 8 area. And after years of being a florist, I just love flowers and I just wanted to grow them at home for myself.
That's very interesting because I start from gardening and then I turn into like flower arranging and you on the opposite way, but we kind of meet in the middle. So how long have you been growing zinnias?
Growing zinnias, definitely 12 years. It was literally one of the first flowers that I tried growing all those years ago. I mean, they're hard to resist. They're such beautiful, easy blooms to grow.
Me too. I started about my second year of gardening. I just grabbed the zinnia seed from garden center because I think it's COVID year. I just grab as much seed as possible. And zinnia is one of the seed. And I try growing them. And then you know what? They got so leggy, they got so weak when I compare to my neighbors, my friends on Instagram, my zinnias doesn't look as pretty as there. Then that's when the next year I found your video, the tips on growing zinnias, and I applied, your tips to my garden. And since then I have more and more beautiful zinnias in my garden. So Amanda, do you agree that zinnias are the easiest cut flower to grow?
Absolutely. I call them the gateway flower because when you start growing zinnias, they are so beautiful and bountiful and easy to grow. It makes you want to do more and more, and it makes you want to try other flowers. So it's literally the number one flower that I suggest beginner gardeners start growing.
Yet beginners usually make mistake with zinnias. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we're gonna go through this in this video.
Absolutely.
So
Even the seasoned gardeners make mistakes because I run into people
myself
all the
too.
time. I know, right? I do too. And even some of my like awesome flower friends who have been gardening way longer than me, they struggle with zinnias sometimes as well. So I think it's really good that even though it's an easy flower to grow, it's not like it's going to be easy for everyone. So it's important to touch on some of the issues so that we can fix our problems and issues and grow beautiful blooms.
So are we ready?
Yes.
So let's start from the very beginning of the journey, starting
Okay.
from what do you think like people make a mistake from growing senior seed like at that stage?
I think one of the biggest things when starting from seed is making sure that we're starting them at the correct time, right? Because it's
Oh, that's
very
so true.
exciting. Yeah, it's very exciting. You go and you see zinnias and you grab them up and you're like, let's start. But it could be December, and that's not the time to
Yeah.
start zinnias.
What do you think is the problem with that?
So I think one of the biggest issues for a lot of gardeners when starting zinnias is that they're not familiar with like perhaps their zone and understanding their
Mhm.
environment. So for example, I'm zone 8 in
Yeah.
Texas,
Yeah.
and it's the beginning of February when we're talking, and it's still a touch too early for me to be starting zinnias inside. I would give it about another week or so, about third or fourth week in February. Zinnias grow so quickly, right? And if you start them inside too soon, they get too big. And large zinnia seedlings do not transplant well. We want to transplant them at a smaller, shorter stage. But then also, it's just too early to put them outside because in my area, my last frost date isn't until mid-March. However, we have been known to have a late freeze in April. So you kind of have to be real
Yeah,
careful
yeah.
because zinnias don't like cold weather at all, like at all. So we don't want to do all that work and then plant them outside and then a freeze come and kill all of our zinnias.
I think that's what happened to me last year because I overconfident because the previous year I transplant my senior outside early, but I got lucky because the weather on that year, there's no one random freezing night. And I
Yeah.
I got lucky. And
Mhm.
last year I did the same thing, but I was not lucky last year. My seniors are in the ground, they are cold, and then they start dying. And then I thought, oh my God, they probably need water. So I water all of them with cold water. So I think the root, got
Yeah.
messed up and then they start dying one by one. It's just so painful. So I should have listened to you and to the other expert by not making that mistake.
And I think that it's important to remember like zinnias love heat. They love heat.
Yeah.
And there's lots of time in a growing season for zinnias. So you don't have to get started too early. So keep that in mind. It's
Okay.
different than some other cut flowers that love the cool season, snapdragons. Snapdragons start them early. They actually can handle a little freeze and the whole thing. But snapdragons stop growing for me in June, right? Because it's too hot after that for
Yeah.
snapdragons in my area. But zinnias will grow the whole gambit. So they will grow from about May into almost December for me because of the
Mhm.
warmth that we still have in our area. So I think the important thing with zinnias is you don't have to be in a hurry with zinnias. So really think about it. If you've had some struggle with some cooler weather on your zinnias, it usually stunts their growth. It can increase disease. It can do a lot of things. So go ahead and wait the extra 2 weeks. Make sure that you are past any frost coming up, pay attention to your weather, and then get your zinnias planted outside.
Now I'm gonna move to the next mistake, which is starting the seed too late. From my experience, that's a mistake for me because actually, I try to start too soon, but I do succession planning. So I start some of the seed like in July. And what
Hmm.
happened is I, as soon as they start to bloom, they got covered with powdery mildew. And I think you like are the expert of powdery mildew solution. Can you share
It's
with
the
us?
worst.
Can you share with us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, absolutely. So once again, it goes back to knowing your zone, right? And knowing how long your growing time, like, general time when it's summer, and that's what zinnias, that's when they love to bloom, is in summertime, right? So
Yeah.
you don't want to start them too late, right? You don't want to start them and plant them out and then they don't, especially from seedling. And we're really we're talking about starting from seed right now, right? We don't want to start zinnias from seed too late and then pop them out in the heat where they might be more susceptible to the humidity is much higher at that point in time. And that's when we really start dealing with some powdery mildew. Powdery mildew is always going to crop up when your zinnia seedling is at its weakest, right? That's when it's going to crop up. So you want to think about, we didn't want to put them out when it's too cold because that'll make the seedling weak. If you don't want to put them out when it's like super hot, you want to
Mm,
balance the time because you're really getting them out there. And yes, we're all looking at the flowers, but really what we want is we want those roots in the ground at the right time. And we want the roots really growing and connecting and bringing in that nutrients and putting that out there at an appropriate time. So we don't want to wait too late on starting zinnias. Now, I do want to point out that my zone 8 in Texas, we have two growing season. And I talked to you a little bit about this, Crane,
yeah.
because we have spring into early summer. And then we have the hottest summer that you could ever think of, and nothing grows during that time. And
Yeah.
then at the end of the summer into fall, we have a second growing season. So a lot of times for me, my zinnias, I will start a whole nother round inside during the hottest part of the season of summer. And then I'll plant them out as we go into fall because that's an appropriate time for me. So I can actually plant 2 times a year for zinnias. Now, that is not the case for everyone. I think in your zone, you are not as ridiculously hot as I am. So you just have one
No,
long growing season.
no, I am in zone 7. In August, it's like very humid and it's like the perfect condition for powdery mildew.
It
So
is.
so my second succession starting around like June to have my zinnia bloom about July. If I start
Mhm.
in July and have them bloom in August, that like is a
Too
nightmare.
late.
So I think our conclusion here is that, learn about your zone, right?
Mhm.
And know about your timing and maybe keep trying, like start them different time of the year and observe which which window of the time that works best for you.
That is super important to remember. It's okay to experiment, and it's great to experiment with seeds because it's way less expensive to experiment with seeds. So try
That
them at
is
all
so
different times. Yeah, try them at all different
true.
times and see what ends up working best for you and your garden.
I think that's my first tip that I learned from your video, like the first time. You said like we should start the Zinnia from seed, not from the plant that we get from garden center. And it's just
Mhm.
so true.
They're so
So
much better.
let's move on to the next mistake. And I think this probably like mistake for some of us is direct sowing. It just doesn't work for me. And
Yeah.
the instruction, a lot of people saying that we should direct sow your zinnias, right? I did so, I tried, but it doesn't work for me. And I learned that there are a few reasons, and I and Amanda have different reason. For me, I go specialty cut flower variety zinnias. These zinnias are bred to be grown for cut flowers. They are not like the, wildflower zinnias that you can sprinkle around your garden and expect them to come out. They need more love, attention, and care. And sometimes I have the birds come to I have a lot of birds in my garden because I have so many trees, and the birds keep eating the zinnia that drop on the ground. So direct sowing doesn't work for me, and I think it might not work if you direct sow Zinnia and they don't germinate. Maybe you have the same problem as me. And Amanda, how about you? Like, what would be the issue why you don't?
I agree with you on the direct sewing. And like you said, for different reasons. When I first started, I followed all the directions, direct sewing the ground. That's the best way. I did all of that. My issue is it is too hot and dry here.
Mm,
And the
okay.
seeds don't get enough water to be able to germinate
Okay.
appropriately. So then, I might plant out a whole bed of seeds and like a third of them would germinate. Even with drip lines and irrigation and the whole thing, it's just so incredibly hot here. And here's the deal. I have a small garden and I am very controlled about where I put where.
Okay.
So it's hard for me to be like, I spent all that time and 70% of them didn't end up germinating at that point, right? So
Uh,
I am really big on starting zinnia seeds inside and growing
Mhm.
them as seedlings and then planting them outside, I have a much higher rate of results with beautiful blooms when I control their beginning steps, when I control and make sure I have this beautiful, healthy seedling to plant outside, as opposed to direct sowing. Now, I know that's not the case for everybody, but I do think that I'm a little bit unusual in that I prefer to start them inside. And it sounds like
Mhm.
you prefer to start them inside as well, Crane. And you and I know you grow all the beautiful specialty zinnias. I grow a lot of standard zinnias, which is great. I love that. But even with the standard zinnias, it kind of works better for them to be started inside too.
And I think the mistake that's kind of it's not like a mistake, but it's like misunderstand. I don't know how to explain, but maybe you can help me. When first year when I grow my senior like are cute and pink, and most of them are single. Then I compare my seniors to the other people, and they're like so full. They look like a ball. They look like
Mhm.
dahlia. And then I keep researching and like, oh, I should go specialty cut flower variety. So
Right.
my point here, if you like double bloom for your bouquets or for your flower arrangement, you know, invest a little bit on the seed, buy from reputable so rep can you help me? Reputed.
Reputable.
Yes.
You got it. You
Source.
got it.
Thank you. Um,
Yeah.
do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And I agree with that across the board on a lot of things from for gardening is that buying from a reputable source is
Mhm.
always going to be better in the long run.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can definitely buy cheaper. It's going to take you longer to get to a fruition, a ending point that you really like. But if for zinnias, it's easy to get on, social media and see their beautiful, gorgeous,
Yeah.
zinnias. Ask what the varieties are because it's not what you're getting from a big box store. It's not those zinnia seeds. You're going to
Yeah.
buy from a specialty farmer who creates those seeds, grows those seeds every year. And it's fun to research and it's fun to try those different varieties out.
So are you ready for the next one?
Yes.
Over fertilizing your seedling. I I kill some of my senior doing this too because I use the potting mix that already have fertilizer mixed in. Then, I learned from a YouTube video saying that, hey, you should fertilize your seedling. And that's true if your seedling mix doesn't have fertilizer built in. So if you put more liquid fertilizer when you use, potting mix that already have fertilizer, your zinnia could die. And
So I'm in agreement. When I start my zinnias inside, I use a very standard potting mix. And zinnia seedlings don't take real long to get going. So they're not actually inside my grow room for very long before
Mhm.
maybe 6 to 8 weeks total, and then they're outside. During that 6 to 8 weeks, I might fertilize them twice with a diluted fertilizer. I like to use the Alaskan fish emulsion. However, it smells really bad. So just so you know, I use that and I use it at a quarter of the strength when I am fertilizing my seedlings inside. Now, once we go outside, I like to go ahead at that point and I just apply a slow release of fertilizer at that point that's specific for flowers. And I'll just toss some of that in the hole when I plant my zinnias, and that's it. Like, I don't touch my zinnias again with fertilizer during this season. And I do think that you can apply a liquid fertilizer later on if you want. But typically, that slow release gives me 3 months and it works great for me.
Okay. So what would happen if you overutilize your seniors? I never do so because I'm broke. I don't I don't have enough fertilizers.
We all are. We're spending all our money on plants. For over fertilizing, sometimes it will stunt the growth. A lot of times it'll produce more green and beautiful leaves and less
Okay.
blooms, which is not great. And then
Uh,
sometimes you can really overdo it on fertilizing. You can actually burn the plant. So I think that just, being a little bit more cautious, zinnias aren't like super heavy feeders compared to
Mhm.
other blooms. So I think just doing some initial fertilization, at a lower amount when they're seedlings, and then adding a slow release fertilizer, you should be good at that point.
Okay. I wanna touch on a little bit about because this is related to me. This is my very first mistake. I heard that seniors are very easy to grow. So I just like make a little hole on my lawn and then I just sow Zinnia right on the dirt. I did not prep my soil at that spot at all. I don't put compost. I don't dig
Mhm.
a hole. I just put my seed there. And they don't grow. And some
Yeah.
of them grow like this big. So I just want to mention that, Zinnia is not heavy feeder, but you still have to prep your soil a little bit, make your soil loose, add some compost, add some slow release fertilizer or organic fertilizers.
You're right. Like it has to have something, right? The best gardens have the best soil. I mean,
Yeah,
and so that's the biggest thing you can do is prepare the soil in your garden. You don't have to do it all at once. You can do a little space at a time. And
yeah.
so if you're just starting out, just pick an area and work in a 4 foot by 4 foot area. Work on that soil, build it up with organic matter, and then get started on planting your zinnias.
Let's move on the next one. Plant seedling too close in the garden.
That's my
It's
number one
too,
mistake that I make.
it's tricky because what is too close, what is too far
I
apart?
know.
My approach is about 10 inches to 1 foot. How about you?
Mine tends to be about 1 foot. I feel comfortable with that. It is the distance is the number one issue for me because I try to cram a whole bunch in there, and that is not the way to do it with the zinnias. They need room to breathe, especially if you're going to be harvesting them for cut flowers. And we kind of goes back to that powdery mildew we were kind of talking about,
Oh yeah, yeah.
pests and such. They need room to breathe and grow and stretch. And so I prefer to do them at about every 12 inches. That feels good for me. And that also works because that's how my drip irrigation is set up in my flower beds. So I can just put one right at the base of one of my emitters, and that works really well.
I think I do that too. But I think there's some farmers saying that you can plant them closer for cut flowers. And then
Mhm.
when I look closer, because they are in an open field. They have a lot of wind and airflow. But when you grow your zinnia in your backyard, you don't have that much airflow and sunlight that will kill powdery mildew. So if you
Yeah,
plant them too close, you might not get the same result that flower farmer have. And
you
also
are totally correct. Yeah,
and also, if the flower farmer, they build their soil. They put a lot of nutrient into their soil. So they have that ability to plant them a little closer. But, in our garden, we almost all of us broke, including myself. So, so, we might space them out a little bit and give them some more room.
I agree with you on the farmers. That makes total sense. They're doing long rows of zinnias. They typically have a big space in between each rows for
Oh,
additional
that's
airflow.
right too. Yeah.
We don't have that, right? It's not
No.
typically something we have. I am in a traditional backyard with tall fences that really
Yeah.
cuts down on everything coming into my yard. So I think that's really important. I think it's easy to get super excited and put all the seeds out. So
Yeah.
start a little bit of time, save a few of the seeds because hey, if it doesn't work out, say you started too early, you still have some left over that you can try again later.
That's very clever.
Yeah.
And I also learned that if you plant them too close, you will get smaller bloom too. And a lot of people ask me on Instagram, Crane, how come your scene is so big? I grow specialty cut flower variety. I give them the room that they need. Now let's move on to the next one.
Okay.
Overhead watering. I think this is yours, Amanda. Can you
So
explain?
this is I hear this question probably the most of all zinnia issues. They're like, why do I have powdery mildew? Why are all my flowers flopping over? Why are there spots on my zinnias? Blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times I'll ask, how do you water your zinnias? And they'll say, well, just with a spray hose over the top of them. I'm like, oh. So zinnias do better if they're watered from the bottom, right? I have drip irrigation set up on my yard, but I know most gardeners don't have the funds. Like I said, we're all broke, right? Don't have the funds for drip irrigation, which is fine. If you're hand watering your zinnias, get down low at the level of your zinnia where it meets the ground and water there at the base of the zinnia, coming out about 12 inches all the way around, allowing a nice deep soak. If you're consistently watering zinnias, and truthfully, most flowers from above all the time, and you're expecting to be able to cut these, you're going to see some damage, browning on some of the blooms, on some of the leaves. It's going to lead to more disease and pest issues if you're constantly watering the zinnias from above. So definitely watering as low as you can to the ground on your zinnias is going to be healthier for them in the long run.
Let's say on a week that the average temperature is around 80. How many times a week do you water your zinnias?
For me, if I'm in the 80s, I'm probably maybe watering once or twice a week in my particular area. And
Mm,
that varies based on your drip irrigation. So my drip irrigation, typically around that time, if I'm watering once or twice a week, depending on if I have rain or stuff like that,
mhm,
I'm typically running my irrigation for maybe 20 to 25 minutes in the
mhm.
more, actually I do them, I think I just switched to in the evenings, but eat it one time a day for 20 to 25 minutes for a nice deep soak for the zinnias. And then I might go 3 or 4 days before I do another round of watering. And that's at 80 degrees for me. Um, it kind of depends if your area is really humid or if you get a lot of rain. We don't get a lot of rain in the North Texas area. We get like a deluge, like all the rain for the entire month will come in like one day. And then we will go. I mean, I've gone up to 120 days without any rain, without any amount of rain before.
Next mistake, don't give them full sun. Um, this is tricky again. What is full sun? Can you help me,
Yeah.
please?
So, full sun in gardener terms is 6 to 8 hours of full, uninterrupted sun. But we all have different gardens, we all have different areas. Texas sun is intense, intense
Okay.
sun. So once again, you have to remember zinnias are not they are a full sun bloom. They love the heat. They love the sun. They're going to be bigger and more beautiful with sun. If you get your stuff planted out and it's getting partial sun, it's pretty easy to tell pretty quickly because your seedlings will get long and leggy and they won't produce very many blooms, right? They're not going to look like this beautiful, like crane zinnias. They're not going to look like crane zinnias, right? So you want to make sure that they're getting minimum 6 to 8 hours of sun per day. Now, zinnias in my garden get sun from the first moment it comes up in the during the day all the way to the end of the day. Mine receive no shade throughout the entire day, and they do fine in Texas 110 degrees heat when they're getting 12 hours of sun a day. They do handle that okay. They're pretty hardy blooms. Like they can take a quite a beating. So I think it really depends on your areas. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I have mine in part shade." And my part shade's most likely not going to work. The more sun, the better, in my opinion, for zinnias.
Yeah, in my first year when I grew my zinnias, I put them like in a very back of my garden. It's almost underneath like the very big tree. And
Yeah.
then, my zinnias go almost like a tree, like a small trap, It's so tall, like taller than me. I am about six, 6'2", and it's just so tall. And I have to keep stacking them, make sure they don't flop, because they don't. get full sun. And
Yep.
my first year, I don't have like big, beautiful bloom like I have now. It took me like 4 years to figure it out. That's kind of bring us to the next mistake is staking. I myself, because before I grew Zinnia, I learned about Dahlia before. So I already learned about staking. But I know that a lot of beginners don't know that you kind of have to give them a little support.
Yes, and I do this wrong all the time too.
Uh-oh.
Even though I've been growing them for 12 years, I dislike staking. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I have to say for staking, don't wait until they're really big and starting to fall over. It's too late. It's too late then.
Yeah.
Start when they get to about maybe 18 inches, go ahead
Agree.
and start staking them then because the stems are going to become stronger and straighter, right? As soon
Yeah.
as your plant starts leaning, zinnias are heliotropic, so they're going to follow the sun. So if your plant starts looking like this, the flower is going to go like this, and then all of a sudden you're going to have a crooked stem, right? So the best thing to do is support them earlier on, so they grow nice and straight up to the sun. But yeah, I'm not good at it. But hey, I do want to say you don't have to go buy all the fancy staking systems. You can use a tomato cage, works great. I use just a stick. I'll just have like a 4 or 5 foot stick and I'll just cram it in the
Mhm.
ground and use a little twine and tie them up. You can definitely do netting if you want to do netting. I mean, just whatever ends up working best for you. I think if you're doing a higher production of zinnias, I think using the netting is definitely the way to go. If you're doing someone like me that I'm not doing as much, I just use something super simple to stick it in the ground and tie it up and support the whole plant.
Next one, forget to harvest your zinnias or deadhead your zinnias. This is not my to to be
This
honest
is
with you, this
me.
is not my mistake because I have such a hard time trying not to cut them because I need flowers for my bouquet. But Amanda, okay, your turn.
I feel like these are all my mistakes, but but that's what 12 years worth of growing zinnias. It'll show you a lot of mistakes. One of my top four goals for gardening in 2025 is to do a better job harvesting out of my garden because harvesting zinnias, it's super important. They're beautiful to look at. And I know it's hard to cut that bloom, but the more you cut on zinnias, the more blooms they're going to give you. They will reward you for cutting them. And so it's super important to make sure that you're harvesting your zinnias so that you can have them for multiple months instead of just that one single bloom that you've been staring at for 2 weeks.
Can you tell us more like what would happen if you don't harvest them?
So if you don't harvest zinnias, basically the plant begins to create seeds. It lets the bloom die off and it has the bloom start to create seeds. And when the plant does that, it tells the plant that it's done with its life cycle, right? Creating
Mm.
the seeds is the last part of a zinnia plant's life cycle at that point. We don't want the plant to get to that point. We don't want the plant to think that it's done, right? So we want to
Okay.
cut those blooms before they start to, get older and start creating seeds so that the plant thinks, oh, I have to produce more flowers so I can create more seeds in the future. So you really got to think about it. You want to stop it from producing seeds so that the plant doesn't go dormant or start to age to a point where it's not taking care of itself anymore. All it's doing is trying to take care of the seeds at that point. So it's very, very important to harvest prior to it starting to make seeds.
Now I understand why people on Instagram saying like, Crane, how come your zinnia are still blooming? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe because I keep cutting them, I
You
have
do.
about 4 or 5 harvests per year, from the same plant, which is amazing. Um, and now it's my turn. My mistake is like cutting them too soon.
Uh,
This is my mistake because when you go senior for cut flowers, you kind of want to cut I don't think a lot of people here wanna cut zinnia except me. I just like as soon as they're ready, I do the wiggle test. If you don't do wiggle test, if you cut them before the stem is 30, they are going to wilt or flop in your flower
Yeah.
arrangement. And as soon as the stem is sturdy enough, I just cut them. But I just learned last year, I think I learned from Aaron from Florida, that you have to wait a little bit, let the little petals to open up to mature. Then you get bigger and then more fluffy and then even more vibrant color from the zinnias. I think Amanda, you see this stage of the zinnias all the time, right? Because you don't cut. You
I
don't,
do. That's what I look at full-blown balloons all the time. But I mean, you're totally correct. If you just allow them a little bit of time, they're going to fill out. Zinnias after cutting don't tend to continue to bloom a lot more after that.
yeah,
So you want to hit them, you want to cut them at just before optimum, right before
yeah.
is when you want to do that. But I think that that's a discovery thing too. So I highly suggest to some people, have a zinnia plant off to the side that's your control zinnia and just let it grow. Don't ever do anything to it. Just watch the whole process. And then have your other zinnias over here, cut them, harvest them, enjoy them, and you will see the difference between those plants at the end of the season. You will see that the ones that you're cutting on, harvesting are going to produce more. They're going to be more vibrant, bushier, and longer. You're just really going to be able to get more from that plant than the one that you do nothing to, that you never cut and you just let grow.
Um, Next one, the mistake is don't cut specialty cut flowers variety deep enough. I learned this from the very beginning of my growing zinnias. My zinnia get too tall, get too tall because you feel so bad to cut them like very deep because I don't want to take away the side branches, the side buds, that they're about to blooming. But a lot of flower farmers they sacrifice those side branches all the time. And I think this have and also, you get too tall seniors. That that's not good.
Well, I definitely think that if you don't cut the zinnia deep enough, you do get tall, straggly plants that are hard to stake once again. I always tell people you can cut pretty deep on a zinnia. I like to leave at least 3 sets of true leaves on my zinnias when I'm cutting down, and I'll cut really harshly sometimes. But I like at least three. I know some people say just two. I
Mhm.
prefer three. It makes me feel a little bit better.
Mhm.
And after that, it'll grow multiple, and then I'll cut down on that a little bit, and then it'll grow multiple from there. So I think I think you can cut it too deep, but I think a little bit deeper is better than just keeping it shallow, allowing it to get tall and wonky and flop over and stuff.
Can we step back a little bit? This is controversial.
Okay.
Should we pinch our seniors or not?
It depends on who you are as a gardener, Crane.
Oh, okay.
That's what it really depends on.
All right.
If you're, I think if you're someone like you who's growing them for cut flowers and you sell and you arrange your cut flowers, I think it's better to pinch, but that's me. I think it's better to pinch. I think you're going to get more blooms. You're not going to get that first gigantic bloom, but I think you're going to get a lot more, beautiful, bold blooms if you pinch. But for me, I just let it grow. And then I harvest that first flower, and then from there it branches out. It depends on who you are as a gardener.
Okay.
I suggest trying both ways. I don't think either way is wrong. I think that some ways are better for some gardeners and some ways are better for others. So I think experimenting and seeing what works best for you is totally fine.
And I think we come to the very last mistake, which is your mistake, not mine.
Yes,
Go ahead.
it's a me. It's a me mistake. It's an Amanda mistake. And that is harvesting zinnias at the wrong time of day. That's what's on my list?
Yes.
I am notorious for getting done at the end of the day, dropping my kids off all the place and going out in 98-degree weather and cutting my flowers, which is the worst. Don't
Uh,
do it, y'all. Don't do it. The best time to harvest zinnias and most cut flowers is first thing in the morning before the sun is really high in the sky. It allows your flowers to drink up the water and nutrients overnight, to replenish themselves when it's not hot and sunny. And then you come in the morning and they've replenished with water and they're nice and firm stems, hydrated, ready to go. That's when you want to cut them. You don't want to cut them at the end of the day when their resources are depleted because they've been dealing with 12 hours of sun outside. They're tired, they're ready to take a break. That is not when you want to harvest your zinnias.
I never have that issue because I have a full-time job. I can only cut
I know
like in
it's hard. It's hard.
yeah, in
It
the morning
is.
or at night. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that too, for some of us who cut in like the middle of the day.
It's
Um,
the work, and I love to sleep. It's my favorite thing in the morning. I don't want to get up and harvest flowers, but that's the best time to do it.
I think for all cut flowers, you should always cut like in the early morning. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I have a bonus mistake. It's a surprise for you. I think the really last mistake is to not make a mistake. Do you agree on that?
I
Gardening
agree.
it's like it's you have to go out there and make a mistake and learn from it.
The best gardeners kill the most plants. And
You say that in almost every of your video.
I do. I do. I just want people to understand gardening is not about perfection, at least for me, right? Gardening
Mhm.
is about the journey and the experience. And the best way you're going to learn from gardening is just to go out there and do it. And if you make a mistake, it's fine. Nobody's, Crane and I are not going to come get you and be like, if you make a mistake, it's okay. It's okay to make a mistake. Learn from it, document it, take a photo of it with your phone so that you remember for next year.
Mhm.
Do whatever you need to do. But making mistakes is part of being a good gardener. It's learning from those mistakes and moving forward. So I think it is really important. I wish we had a better word than mistake,
Yeah.
experience, or something like that.
I think this is what I like about gardening community, when you make mistake and you share with your flower friends and you get support from them, like
You
they
do.
share information. Nobody's like point finger at you, and this is such a wonderful thing to garden, to build connection, not only with the plants and flowers, but also with people.
With
And
people.
Amanda, I'm so honored to have you here in my channel. I've been learning so much from you, and you never say anything like "Don't make this mistake, don't do this, don't do that, buy this, buy that." It just it just feel like you have a friend who share with you how to garden. And I know you might feel on the uncomfortable side to talk about mistake in this video, right? And
Mhm.
but I think I don't know, it's good. I think this is fun. I think a lot of people gonna enjoy this. Thank you so much, Amanda.
I'm excited. And I have to tell you, when I saw your message asking me to come, it made my day. I was so excited. I was so excited to be able to come
Oh,
and do a video with you. So I thank you for contacting me. So once again, I'm Amanda with She's a Mad Gardener, and I am just a regular person. I do a lot of focus on budget gardening in a small space. I live in just one of those typical cookie cutter suburban homes, nothing fancy. But I do a lot in my garden, and you can do a lot in your garden too, even if you don't have a giant space and even if you don't have a giant budget. And like Crane says, I just really try to bring real life gardening to YouTube. I'm not fancy, rarely going to have makeup on. I'm always in a t-shirt. I'm always hot and sweaty because it's Texas. I'm in zone 8 in Texas.
look at me, it's so
But like I
cold here.
said, I know, right? And but like I said, like Crane was saying too, my channel is really about community. We communicate a lot with each other. all my subscribers. We comment, we answer questions, we provide advice. And I think that that is probably where I've learned more than anything about gardening is through comments from other people.
Oh,
Just leaving advice, talking, have you tried this? What do you think about this? I'm in this zone, blah. It's a wealth of resources and knowledge all in one place, which is probably my favorite thing about YouTube.
why she's mad gardener? I never, I have
I
never
know.
seen you mad at all.
I
Not
know.
at all.
Okay. It's it was not a good choice of name. Let's just be upfront about that. But I'm too far in and we have to keep the name now. So it transpired from the phrase a mad scientist. Somebody like a scientist who goes out and experiments and tries things and let's do this and let's do that, and they're not afraid to experiment and learn and grow. And so it kind of just stemmed from that phrase, a mad scientist,
Oh,
because
okay.
I'm a little crazy about gardening. So it's she's a mad gardener instead of she's a mad scientist. So that, but it's too late. I have the name, like I can't go back and change it at this point. So it makes me laugh because nobody understands. They're like, you're not mad.
No, not at all. You're the nicest person in the whole wide world. All right, now I have to let you go.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this. Let's end this video with your slogan.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
As always, she's a mad gardener or a decorator or anything else that she wants to be. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks you all.
And thank
Can you do
you.
this? I always do this in my video. Do this. Can you do on the other side? Yeah.